Thanks for jumping on a call, Tom. Really good to meet you. So I think it was good to connect on Twitter talking about Agile.
Mhm.
So I'm going to pick your brains and your experiences and what you get up to and your thoughts on Agile and how you use it. But yeah, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do to start off?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for reaching out. Like, I'm happy to talk always. I'm not sure. I hope that what I will say will be useful to anyone. So I'm a Ruby engineer in a medium-sized company. Like we have like 300 engineering team currently, maybe 400 now because we are hiring quite actively. I used to work as a Ruby developer for almost 4 years now. Prior to working in a product company, I used to work in agencies where I developed smaller applications for clients. And even before that, I used to work as a business consultant in workplace strategy setting. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. So broad experience. And I think it's nice having that mix of working on small projects and large projects, right?
Yeah, it definitely helps. Like, learned different things back then, and I'm learning different things now. That there are different problems in bigger product company because it's more like building bridges. So you work on this
Yeah.
small part of the system, but the problems are completely different. But then, because of the experience that I gathered before, I get like to be a bit more dynamic than some of my friends who worked only in product companies. So that's good setting, like good set of
Yeah.
skills.
Nice. So as a high level question, like
Mhm.
what would you say Agile means to you if you had to like sum it up in a few sentences? What's the main thing about Agile that, what does it mean to you?
And that's really difficult question, but I think that this is some kind of quality, or maybe
Hmm.
trait would be a better word. Or if you would like to like say, what is it for me as a developer, is being capable of delivering software in a way that it's good for both team and users, in a bit like in an adaptive way, in a way which allows you to iterate fast. And yeah, it's really broad question, because like when I think about Agile, is mix of some kind of process what's the word, process settings, or process setup you work in as a
Yeah.
team, but also like a set of habits you have, because it's even more important to have good habits, because this setting you work in can change, but with proper habits you are easy to adapt to it. So
Yeah.
I think that Agile is highly about adaptability to changing circumstances, and in software we probably both know that they change a lot, and the
Mhm.
faster you are able to adapt it, the more agile you are, and the better you are able to deliver the stuff.
Yeah, nice. That's a good point about habits. I suppose that's the aim of the sort of ceremonies that are part of what we might call agile, or I suppose the ceremonies that we're used to these days are actually defined in the kind of Scrum methodology, right? We'll come back to that, like Agile and Scrum and the differences, or are they just the same? But yeah, agility and delivering value, right? It's about delivering
Mhm.
software. I guess that's a kind of key point. I think I put a similar question out on Twitter, and somebody said, from a user's point of view, it doesn't really matter. It's just about delivering working software that's useful and delivering that value. But underneath, inside the team, though, it is incredibly hard to maintain that agility, right, and develop those habits. But it's so important. So do you want to tell us a bit about your experience with Agile then? Agile and or Scrum and
Mhm.
or anything else in like the small setups and then larger setups?
Sure. So back in my agency days, I used to work like in proper Scrum. So we had like daily stand-ups, which were pretty much, they were really strict. Like, we went through all of this, like what I did yesterday, what I will be doing today, what are the blockers. And we had a retrospective every 2 weeks and weekly refinements of our backlog, and demo once per week, or once per 2 weeks, depending on setting. And in this setting, it was quite hard to really become mature agile team, because I think that this is good starting point for every team to start with these ceremonies. But while the project advances and your team like goes with it, you should probably tailor made it to your needs, because like you should try to adjust it. So you need to take these ceremonies and see what works for you, what doesn't, what would be better. That's of course what retrospective is for. But I believe that if you are in the project for half a year, there may be some things that you can fix, might be some things that you can make better, but you do not really have like the time to see everything that works and doesn't work. So currently I'm working in the same team for almost 2 years now. And it is completely different because we have this time. We also have space because we are not being pushed by client. We have internal client, but we have much more space, much more slack to just discover what works and what doesn't. So, for example, our stand-ups currently are mostly about eliminating. We do not like tell what we did yesterday, what we will be working today on. We just go through our board, talk about every ticket, if anything is blocking, if anything is needed on the way to push it faster to production. But yeah, we also introduce some kind of stuff like we have work in progress limits. We still have retrospective, weekly refinements. We have demo when it's needed. So when we deliver something that can be demoed, because most of the time I'm working in a backend team. So not everything we deliver is visible and can be showed on the demo. So we have demo whenever it makes sense. And most of the time we do stuff that makes sense for us. But because we worked together for a longer period of time, it's much more easier for us to understand and to be aware. I think that the main difference is that over the time you can build awareness, and when you build awareness, you can pinpoint the pain points and like see what works, what doesn't. You can experiment with stuff and keep the stuff that works. For example, for us, one of the biggest improvements was the work in progress limit. So we enforced like we are only able to have 4 tickets in progress in 5 developers team, and this really pushed us towards pair programming, because if you can't pick up new ticket, you need to pair with someone and help him deliver his ticket faster. And that's really great. Like it increased collaboration, knowledge sharing, and many other things. And of course, we also adjusted because we had like 1 month of working in a different setting because we needed to prepare new environment, and our process wasn't really adjusted to this. We needed to fix it a bit, so we did it. So that's also being agile, at least the way I think about it, because if you need to be able to adapt to, as I mentioned before, to changing circumstances. And now, after this period of work, a bit different work, we are back to the old process and to what works for us. Yeah, I think that the retrospectives are a really important part because we really get to dig into process and to what works and for what doesn't. And I also saw that when working with team over a longer period of time, these retrospectives change. You start paying attention to different stuff.
Yeah.
So you are just growing. The team is growing. Like this is really cool.
Yeah, that's a really nice point. And that is agility, isn't it? You're growing, your kind of team reaches different levels of maturity the longer you kind of work together, right? And I think that is the point of agility, to kind of grow, right? And sometimes it can be painful, but actually it's worth it in the long run, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's really nice to hear those examples as well. The work in progress limit is so I've come across that from, I think it's quite common in Kanban, right? About encouraging flow and keeping the kind of work being delivered. That's a really nice kind of idea about five developer team having a work in progress limit of 4 tickets. And yeah, that pair programming that helps with like internal knowledge sharing, right? Internal communication, but also I guess helping just things flow quicker and reducing those blockers. What would you say is like one of the main benefits of pair programming in your experience? What do you like about it?
Okay, so maybe it's not the biggest benefit, but what I like about it is like I started working at the beginning of pandemic. So for me, it was also important that I get to know people better. I think that this was the biggest benefit for me personally. And when it comes to benefit for my team, definitely the knowledge sharing, like the fact that you can, it's better for example, we are hiring a lot of interns and junior developers. In my team, we had like two junior developers, and in remote setting, I think it's really difficult for them. So the more time they can spend with someone more senior, the better, especially that in company like mine, when we develop this pension platform, it's not only about technical side, it's also about domain knowledge. And this domain is quite complex, and it's really hard to get into it without someone who already developed something around it. So any hour you can spend with someone who knows more than you, it's really cool. So yeah, and also like we had really good human connections thanks to it. There are a lot of benefits. I know that people say that some of the common argument why you shouldn't do this is because two people are working on the same thing, but I think that it only makes it faster, because there are the days that you don't feel like maybe not you feel like you're treading waters, like you are slow. And if you start pairing with someone, usually it gets faster because you start paying attention, you are more engaged. It's also quite, maybe not exhausting, but tiring experience. So it's not like I'm not able to work in pair programming for example, a few weeks straight, but I'm happy to do this like 2 or 3 days per week.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think that human element, the social kind of human communication element is kind of key, right? And I think that's why it's potentially more exhausting as well, right? Because peopling is hard, right? Dealing with people is but beneficial, and so important. I think in software, good software is actually all about people sort of collaborating, right? Unless you are working on a project on your own, which is very rare these days. But I think the ceremonies and the kind of activities that are put in place to help facilitate those things, just from your examples, it helps sort of drive those relationships and helps bond a team, right? Which only leads to long-term gains.
Yeah, definitely. Like as I mentioned before, for me it was the biggest factor. Like having to talk to people. It also, like, it's tiring because of the remote setting. It's more tiring because of the remote setting, because the calls are exhausting. For example, I think that having good tooling around such activities is really important. We use Tuple, which is really great, and it's probably the smoothest remote pair programming experience you can get on the market. But there are also some VS Code extensions or JetBrains extensions if you are using RubyMine or maybe some WebStorm or anything like this. So you can make your life easier around it, and it's definitely worth it. So having proper tools helps.
Nice. Human activities, right?
Yeah.
Tools don't solve the problems. They kind of help us do our jobs better. So nice. That's really good to hear. Question coming back to Agile and Scrum. So would you separate Agile and Scrum in a conversation, or do you think they've just become one and the same? They've become the same thing in this day and age?
Oh, I think that people confuse them for being the same, but I would definitely separate them. For me, like my current, we do not work. No one would call our team way of working proper Scrum. So we do not even plan sprints. So it's more likely we want in some kind of Scrum ban, probably. That's something people use recently. I heard this. Recently, that there is something like Scrum ban. So, but yeah, I think that Agile is much broader, and it's a bit of way of doing things, maybe a philosophy. Once Scrum is some kind of framework of way of implementing Agile. So yeah.
And I've seen comments about Scrum being really useful for kind of new teams or to kind of help teams understand the different things you can do in an Agile work environment. But those ceremonies don't necessarily change the mindset, right? It is, like you say, it's like a philosophy and approach, kind of general style of working, which takes a mindset change, doesn't it?
Yeah, and like this, what you said is really important, because like it's great for new teams to have these ceremonies, because these are basically habits you want to build. But once you get this foundation, you get to evolve from it. There is this Japanese concept I really like. It's shuhari. So like the shoe you are imitating what people better than you are doing. So you are trying to imitate what they do. At ha, you are trying to do some stuff on your own, and at three you just are. So you just perform, and that's the way you need to take in everything. So if the team is new, setting these boundaries and these stricter rules, so having these ceremonies being run is probably good, because they let you build foundation, and then you get to move on from there.
Yeah, fantastic. So final question for now. If you had to convince someone of the benefits of Agile, which ceremony would you highlight first and why? So if you had to pick one ceremony that maybe you're experienced with, maybe trying to convince somebody that's not so familiar with kind of working in an Agile manner, what would you choose? So sell it to me.
Sure. So I think that first thing that comes to my mind are dailies, but I think that retrospectives are far more useful, and they make more sense for everybody, because like this is the point in time when you get to stop, look back at the previous iteration and see what you did good and what you did wrong, and like take some actions and takeaways and adapt it. I think that you can live without dailies. You can, for example, I know that some teams only write down what they are working on, or if there are any blockers on Slack or whatever other comms they are using. But it's hard for me to imagine working without retrospectives and stopping to just take a breath, look back on this 1 or 2 weeks, whatever we decide, and think like what I did good, what was wrong, what we can fix, where are the bottlenecks, what we should avoid in the future to make our lives easier. Because this is all about, like, I'm a big fan of Kaizen, so these small steps improvements, and these retrospectives are really the way to introduce it. Like you want to identify the small steps you can take to make your life better, because if you don't do this, you are just stuck in a place and you're not moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I agree. And many people I'm speaking to, retrospectives are one of the key ceremonies, those key phases where it's the feedback loop, right, to improve the processes and enhance the team's way of working. So yeah, so thanks so much, Tom, for all your thoughts on Agile and Scrum and everything in between. It was really good to get to know how you work and pick your brain. So yeah, thank you very much.
Happy to share. Thank you.